Hey everyone, welcome to part 17 of my no armor, no deaths, no ranged weapons, fists only playthrough of Demon Souls. I'm just before the boss room in the Prison of Hope, and there's an invisible NPC here that shoots crossbows at you until you get close enough to make her visible, so obviously she has a thief ring on. I wasn't concerned about this NPC at all because I destroyed her really quickly in my first playthrough. However, because of that, I didn't know that she could put plague on you. She hit me here and I got infected with plague. So that suddenly changed the ball game, and since my health was now steadily going down and her health was still reasonably high, suddenly this became a little bit more nerve-wracking of a fight than I had anticipated it to be. I didn't want to take the risk of popping a grass to heal just in case she shot me with a crossbow at that point and killed me. So even though my health was low, I had to pretty much kill her without healing from this point forward, which meant if she hit me one more time, it was the end of my playthrough. What I had to do was kill her and go into my inventory and use an item to cure plague, but I couldn't remember what the plague item was. So I'm fumbling in my inventory under panic. Looked at the Soldier's Lotus note, looked at the Widow's Lotus, popped it, and when I popped it, I looked at my health and realized that I was only millimeters away from my health having been completely drained and my playthrough being completely ended. So that was a moment of stress. So anyway, at the start of that fight, when I wasn't that stressed, I remembered that once you beat the Fool's Idol, you get whisked away to a different area. And if that happened, I realized I would end up having to come back here and deal with all of the enemies I'd already killed all over again. So I decided to not to fight the boss straight away and to come back and see if I could find the key that I was missing. But as I was running back here, I thought about it and I thought, well, I have the special key, and the special key didn't open Lord Redell's cell, which meant the special key was probably the key needed to open the cell of Sage Frake, which is the second NPC in the Prison of Hope in a cell. But I couldn't remember. I thought I hadn't seen Sage Frake yet, which meant I hadn't likely been to where Sage Frake was yet. And then I remembered, well, I had the Warden's key and that had opened up the pathway between the third floor and the second floor. So it was likely that I had the key to free one of the NPCs and I just had to find the area of the prison where he was. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm stumbling around trying to find the area that I hadn't been to yet, with the thought that if the special key unlocks that dude's cell, then the key that I need from Upper Latria, not the Tower of Latria, which is I think what I said in the last part, but from Upper Latria, which is after you beat the Fool's Idol, then that would be the key to free Lord Redell. So that's what I'm testing here, and I'm hoping to find Sage Frake. I didn't know if he was here, but I thought this was the area I hadn't been yet. And then bam, there he is in his cell, and the special key unlocked it for him. So I was pretty happy about this because it meant even though I'd been completely lost, or mostly lost in the Prison of Hope, that I'd finally found what I needed to find, and I knew there was nothing else I could do here until I completed the whole Upper Latria area, or whatever that's called. The area after Fool's Idol. So that meant I could now go and kill the boss. And as I headed off to do that, I reminded myself that there was an item out near the ballista that I'd been struggling to work out how to get to before. And I thought, well, it seems like I've got all the keys for the Prison of Hope, so there should be no reason why I can't get to that item now, because the only key I don't have is purely for Lord Redell's cell. So I decided I would look around a little bit more, because I didn't want to come back here and deal with enemies again to try and find the way to that item. But I knew that there was an area of the prison that I hadn't been to yet that somehow I'd missed, and this is me now searching for that area, because I knew I had to find that area before killing the boss. Otherwise, it'd just be a real pain in the ass later on. Even now, watching this footage back, I can tell you that the Prison of Hope is still pretty confusing to me, and I reckon I'd have to play this area through, 4 or 5 times before I would be able to just run through it comfortably, knowing exactly where I need to go. I don't know. I don't know if it's just me, but this area confuses the hell out of me. And here I finally spot the open door with the boxes in front of it. And this leads to the very item that I was looking for. And it turned out to be the S-Stock. And that was my cue to free up some weight by sending off some items to storage. And interestingly, at this point, I decide, okay, I've done it all. It's time to head off to the boss. But there was actually one little area that I'd forgotten about that I'd already been to and already seen a locked gate that I hadn't passed through. But I do eventually come back to that when I come back for Lord Riddell. But at this point in my playthrough, I'd completely forgotten about it. I thought I was all clear to move ahead and go get the boss. The Fool's Idol is a boss I was not in the least bit concerned about. I'd already made a guide on how to easily beat her, and I remembered that because it was quite an extensive guide on how to understand how to move around and avoid all of the traps that she puts down in this room. And yeah, I remember that pretty well because I put a bit of effort into that guide, so I wasn't worried about this boss at all. What I'm doing here is just clearing all of the stuff in the room that can kind of derail you from running around and get you stuck, as you can take a hit from a ranged blast if you get stuck on something, so I just want to make sure that couldn't happen. Apart from that, I also wanted to clear the room of enemies, just in case, and I didn't think they posed me really any danger, but I was taking my own advice, and that was to clear the room before engaging the boss. I knew I wouldn't be able to clear the enemy at the front near her, because once you go too far forward, she'll activate and then she'll put her traps down. I thought I could probably get this guy, but then the traps will activate, and I speculated there was a trap on the right here, so I rolled over it. And then I just came back here to remind myself of where in the room I could safely run without worrying about her traps. you can know where her traps are without having to see them, and I pretty much remembered from the video I made on how to beat her. So yeah, it was time to fight her. Roll under a blast, and then I remembered, oh yeah, that's right, there's an item here, the baby's nail, which is best picked up before you beat her. Otherwise, you have to kind of give this whole altar area a wide berth to get it afterwards. Easier to pick it up before you beat her. So now that she's teleporting around, I knew where all the traps were from memory. So all I had to do was spot which one was the real boss. And all you have to do for that is lock on, and the real boss won't have a health bar above her head because her health bar, the real boss's health bar, is on the bottom of the screen. So I knew this was the real boss. I didn't want to punch her anymore there because I thought there was a trap right below her. So that's a fake version of the boss because it had a health bar, and this would be the real boss. It's always safe to run in and hit the real boss, at least until you almost get to the middle of the chairs. Again, no health bar, so I knew that was the real boss. Hit me there. And I'm just running around this area because I knew it was safe to go diagonally in here towards her to get her. Also, it's good to get to the boss quickly because as soon as you put the damage on her, all of the fake versions stop firing and she prepares to teleport away. So it's actually safer to get to her than it is to kind of wait and be patient. I could tell by the size of their blast that they weren't the real boss, and I locked onto this one and saw that that was the real boss. I also knew I was safe to go through the middle of the chairs here because this row is perfectly safe to run through. And I was pretty happy to see that my fists were doing pretty good damage against her. This wasn't going to be a 20-minute fight, which was something I was very thankful about. I locked onto her and I could see she was the real boss, but she was also directly in front of a trap. And I think from memory, I just decided, screw it, I'll probably get hit by the trap, and I do. Even though I knew it was there, I just wanted to get as many punches on her as I could. Also, the trap barely hurt me. I mean, the traps basically don't hurt you. What they do is they stun you and leave you vulnerable to a ranged attack. But if you're hitting the boss at the time, no ranged attacks are going to happen, which means if you step in a trap while hitting her, it's no big deal at all. Pretty easy boss fight, this one, and thankfully a quick one. Now I just needed to approach the altar, and then the gargoyles come and take you away to the next area, which is Upper Latria. However, I wasn't planning on doing Upper Latria next. I just wanted to trigger this so that I could get back to the Nexus. But I was thinking I would leave Upper Latria for later, mainly because I wasn't sure how my fists would fare against the Man-Eater boss. I mean, I thought they'd be okay, but I wasn't completely sure how they would fare. And since I'd barely given this area any thought, apart from remembering there was a key somewhere here that I had to get, yeah, I thought, and also since it was an area that you could fall off pretty easily, I thought, I'll leave this till later and I'll just think about it in the meantime and try to remember what I have to do and where I have to go whilst I do an area that I remember better. Alright, so I had some souls to level up, but I remembered I'd found the claws, and the claws required 14 dexterity in order to level them up. I had enough souls for that amount of dexterity. I wasn't really comfortable with putting my souls into anything other than health, endurance, or strength, but if the claws were going to give me more damage and reduce some of these 20-minute long boss fights, then I thought maybe it's worthwhile putting them on. So I decided to pull them out of my storage, equip them, and then go back and see how much extra damage I would get if I put my souls into dexterity, which was something I really didn't want to do, but I kind of wanted the extra damage from the claws, so I was willing to do if the damage amount was going to be reasonable.
Soul of the mind, key to life's ether. Soul of the lost, withdrawn from its vessel.
So with the claws on and with 14 dexterity, I could see that my right hand weapon would do 79 damage, but my left hand weapon was doing 80. So I knew that it wasn't actually going to be any better with a base level set of claws than just using my fists. So I wasn't prepared to put all of my souls into dexterity to wear the claws with a base level set of claws. That meant the only way I could be sure as to whether it was worth it would be to upgrade the claws as far as I could. Now, I knew there were only 3 fist weapons in the game: the Hands of God, the claws, and the Iron Knuckles. I knew I wasn't going to get any Iron Knuckles from farming at this point, and I knew I wouldn't use the Hands of God because they were too slow, cumbersome, and required stats that I didn't want to invest into. So I really had no choice here. It was either upgrade the claws or don't use them. And upgrading them wasn't really an issue because I had no use for all of the materials necessary to upgrade them anyway, and the amount of souls to upgrade them was minuscule. So yep, I decided I'll upgrade the claws as far as I possibly can, and that way I'll actually get to see how much extra damage I'll be able to do by wearing them. And then I have to admit, I got a bit confused here because there was claws +1, claws +2, and claws. And I'm staring at this thinking, well, the claws +2 is the upgrade to my claws +1, but what are the claws below that? And I was thinking, can I buy another pair of claws from this guy or something? What is that? So basically I fumble around here trying to work out, do I have a second set of claws, or does he have a second set of claws that I can also upgrade? Can I buy another set of claws from him, or what am I missing here? And then I realized, it took me a little while, but then I realized, oh yeah, of course, you can actually downgrade your claws to the base level. So yeah, I didn't understand what I was seeing there for a moment. So once I realized that, I decided I would just upgrade them as far as I could. And as soon as I upgraded to claws +4, another option popped up, which was quality claws +1. Now, I had no idea what version of upgrading the claws would give me the greatest amount of damage, but I did know that upgrading claws in any non-standard way would probably require some kind of special material, and I assumed that I probably wasn't going to get the special materials I needed to upgrade the special type of like quality claws or whatever other special type of upgrades are available for the claws in this playthrough without farming. I didn't want to do that, so I decided, stuff it, I'm just going to do a standard upgrade with standard materials as far as I can go, maybe up to +10 if I can, But because I didn't have any large sharpstone shards, I ended up stuck at +7. That's fine, that was as far as I could go, so I was happy with that.
Then touch the demon.
Now it was back to the Maiden in Black to see what having 14 dexterity would do for my attack power.
Life's ether.
And it went up from basically 80 to 137, which I didn't think was that much, but at this point I thought, well, it could make things go, 30% faster, something like that, which could turn boss fights into, 12 to 15 minute fights instead of 20-minute fights. And I thought, yeah, I'll take that. That's worth it. I'm going to upgrade my dexterity and wear the claws from this point forward. And even though I was happy to say this wouldn't be a bare-fisted run, it'd just be a fist-only run, allowing myself to use the claws as my only fist weapon, I was still a little hesitant because I only had one. I didn't know if you could get two. I kind of felt weird to be running around with just one fist weapon on and nothing on my left hand. But I figured, well, technically it's a 50% bare-fisted run, so whatever. But the thing is, I knew I could get a second set of claws somewhere in the game. From memory, I thought one had dropped in the inner ward for me, and I thought maybe it had dropped off those assassin dudes, which are called the Imperial Spies. I wasn't 100% sure, but just like with the Iron Knuckles, I was pretty sure in my first playthrough I'd had a set of claws drop from those assassins in that area. So at this point, I'm just repairing the silver bracelets and trying to remind myself that yes, you're going to have to repair your claws from this point forward, something I hadn't had to think about while using bare fists. But now that I had the silver bracelets on and the claws, I had to remind myself, yep, I'm going to need to go to that blacksmith to repair things from this point forward. And as far as next areas go, I was planning on doing the Depraved Chasm just because I thought the first part of the Depraved Chasm would be reasonably easy, especially with a set of claws. But the more I walked around here, the more I thought, I'm sure those assassins can drop claws. And if they can, then there's a chance that I could get that second set, and then it'd be really cool. I'd be basically She-Hulk Wolverine. So I decided, yeah, I'll go and I'll do the inner ward. Just the start of it, not the whole thing. I didn't want to fight the Penetrator just yet, which is the boss at the end of it. But I thought if I can just do the start until you open the initial gate, which is the shortcut through, then maybe I might come out of it with a second set of claws, and then that would help me greatly to run through the Depraved Chasm area, that whole world, as well as the Upper Latria area. So yes, here I'm staring at the inner ward thinking, yep, I'm sure they drop the claws. I'm sure of it. And I thought, and it doesn't matter if they don't, because if they don't, I'll still have opened up the shortcut to the Penetrator. So yeah, the inner ward it was, and off I went. And we'll do that in part 18. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you there.